Yo, what up, dogs? Welcome back to another movie review. This time I'm going to be talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This movie came out in February of 2023. It is a PG-13 action-adventure comedy, and it runs for about 2 hours and 4 minutes. The director is Peyton Reed, and the writer is Jeff Loveness, and it stars Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, Michael Douglas, Michelle Pfeiffer, Jonathan Majors, and Kathryn Newton. The logline on IMDb reads as Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne, along with Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, explore the quantum realm where they interact with strange creatures and embark on an adventure that goes beyond the limits of what they thought was possible. The interesting thing about this logline is they leave out the daughter, Cassie Lang, who is the driving force of this whole entire movie, so to speak. So I don't know why she's not in a logline. But let's get into the story of this movie. Kind of be prepared for some spoilers. I'm not going to go too hardcore in the spoilers. Very high level Cole's notes as usual. But I just want to give you that quick little warning that I may spoil one or two things, but I'm going to do my best not to because... So let's talk about the story a little bit before I tell you how much I enjoyed this film. So we start this movie off with Cassie Lang working on some quantum technology with Hank Pym. Together they've figured out how to make some kind of quantum beacon, so to speak, that is like not really explained that well, but they send a probe out into the quantum verse, and Janet finds out and she's like, please shut it down. This is a horrible idea. There's stuff in the quantum verse that you don't want to mess with. But before they could shut it down, a portal's open and the Ant family gets sucked into it, and trials and tribulations of the Ant family begins because they land in the quantumverse separated. You have Janet Van Dyne, Hank Pym, and Hope over here, and Scott Lang and his daughter Cassie over there. So they're in two separate spots. And the ants, well, they landed somewhere else. You'll figure that out later. I won't spoil it. Now you're following two families, right? The Janet Van Dyne, Hank Pym family, and Hope over here doing their thing and trying to figure out how to get to Cassie and Scott. And Scott and Cassie are like doing their own thing, trying to find them, right? And that's the whole thing. Now, okay, let me do this. Okay. All right, so here's the story. Cassie Lang has been fooling around with quantum realm technologies with Hank Pym, and together they figure out how to make some kind of quantum realm beak, and they operate it and send it adrift. And Janet Van Dyne is like, do not do this, shut it down. This is a horrible idea. There's stuff in the quantum realm that you do not know about, that I never told you about. Shut it down before something bad happens. And before they could shut it down, guess what? Chaos ensues. A portal is open, but we don't know how or who or what until later. And everyone in the Ant family gets sucked into the quantum realm. Now, in the quantum realm, we have two crews are formed. We have Scott and Cassie on their own little adventure, and you have Hank Pym, Janet, and Hope on their little adventure. And eventually, the two teams will meet up, but after they have their own trials and tribulations. So we have Hank Pym, Janet, and Hope on their adventure where they are trying to find Cassie and Scott before it's too late, before the big bad entity that only Janet knows about comes and gets. So they travel through their quantum verse area, and Janet knows everybody. Everyone's like, oh no, Janet's back. Like, it's a big deal because she did stuff on the quantum realm that she's never talked about before. So she's like a big bad rebel, so to speak, down there. She doesn't take any crap from anybody. As we go along, we have a scene in a cantina or a bar with her, Hank, and Hope. And Bill Murray shows up. And this is a scene that I actually do not care for. It shouldn't be in this movie. It's dumb. They could have deleted it and saved some money and put that money towards the CGI. You know what I'm saying? But we have Bill Murray show up. It turns out they were lovers for 30 years in the quantum realm. And it's like a very weird and awkward scene between the three family members and Bill Murray, which makes it even weirder. Like, it doesn't need to be in this film. It's like, this is a kid's movie. Like, even for adult content, for the adults who are there to watch this film with their kids, it's not needed. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Like, the concept of infidelity in the Marvel universe, where it's like, well, why would you do that? Like, Hank Pym, like, loves Janet. If you've watched all the Ant-Man movies, Hank loves Janet, and his whole goal and drive in life is to save her, only for it to get belittled by Bill Murray's character saying that they had relations in the quantum verse, and Janet's like, oh, I had need, and Hank is like, that like kills Hank's soul. To me personally, I'm like, oh, this man who's dedicated the last 30 years trying to save you, you just whittled it down to, yeah, I had needs too. And then he has to play it off cool, like, oh yeah, I saw a woman or two. And it's like, this is so stupid. It's so stupid against the character. I don't understand why it's in here. So delete that whole thing. Get rid of it. It was a bad plot point, and it doesn't need to be in this film. Delete it. Goodbye. Save the money. So now we have Scott and Cassie doing their adventure, which is where they run into MODOK, who is a giant floating head. In case you've never seen MODOK, who's actually incredibly badass in the comic books. If you know him from the comic books, you're going to be a little disappointed with the concept of MODOK in this film. I personally, as a child, never really read MODOK's stuff or really interacted with him in any of the comic books that I was really reading that much. So I have a very low bar for him, but I still think he's a cool character. Like, I know of him. I've read about him. Trust me, I've read the Marvel encyclopedia multiple times in my life, and I think he's a cool character. But in this iteration, he's a comic relief, funny kind of guy, and he looks funny, and I don't mind the look of him. Honestly, I'm probably the only one out there that's like, well, how else do you do a floating head? I think they should have hit the concept art a little bit harder on MODOK. But like, it is what it is. Maybe a little bit more cartoony with the look instead of plastering on a face. I don't know. I don't know how else he could approach it. I would have to sit there in the creative for a little bit to be like, hey dogs, can we get another couple passes over this before we put the CG work in? Anyways, he is a cool character though. Like, he has actually like really badass technology. He's kind of insane because of like just he's an insane level of intellect, and he knows how to build stuff. Like, he's actually kind of a threat in the comic book. In this, yeah, he is just pretty much comic relief. He finds Scott Lang and Cassie, pretty much kidnaps them and takes them back to the big base, where we find out about Kang the Conqueror. So Janet tells us and the family about Kang and how she interacted with him to work on his chair that can teleport and time travel to help her get out of the Quantumverse. So together they work and figure out how to fix this chair. But when they fix it, Janet Van Dyne finds out all about Kang's alternative motivations and what he's been doing out there. So she breaks the machine that they just repaired so he can be stuck there forever. And she runs away, and like, this is how she becomes the rebel of the Quantumverse, is her versus Kang. That we don't really know much about the story of her versus Kang throughout, but those two are enemies, and she's been trying to avoid him and stay away from him because she's the only person that can revitalize the chair's core that they rebuilt, and he's after her because she has the technology to fix what she broke, and he can get the hell out of there. Okay, so this is a very major plot point to this movie because throughout the beginning of the film, Janet Van Dyne has not told anybody about what went on in the Quantumverse with her. And if she ever told somebody this plot point of Kang the Conqueror has been banished in the Quantumverse and she's left him behind to never go back there, and if she told anybody about this, any Avenger level dude, even Ant-Man and the family, right? They would never have a reason to go into the Quantumverse ever again because the Quantumverse would be hands off. The only way you could access the Quantumverse again would be through a different group of characters that have no clue what the Quantumverse is, i.e. Fantastic Four, because the Quantumverse is a Fantastic Four universe of stories. So they could have eventually introduced the Quantumverse way, way later if they said, you don't go in there because Kang exists, which also means Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, the movie, would not ever have to be made. So it's a very weird and glaring plot point that without it being said, the movie can be made, and it makes no sense. Or if she says it, Ant-Man 3 doesn't get made, and we get a different Ant-Man movie. So we get a different adventure, which is cool because I like the Ant-Man adventures. And then we could probably have to explore, probably what I am suggesting here would be a different Thor movie, because Thor would go after Loki going, where's my brother? Where's the Tesseract? And that would have been a different movie to introduce Kang into if you wanted to introduce Kang. But let me finish the rest of the story here. So we learned about Kang, and then we also learned that Scott has a mission to fix the core that Janet originally broke because he has the technology, and Cassie kidnapped, and under Kang's will, he'll kill her if Scott doesn't do this mission. Scott goes, does the mission, completes it. Hope saves them. The family's reunited, and I'm just going to bubble over a lot of stuff. We have like the last half hour of this movie is literally like nonstop combat, like just CGI combat. Cassie breaks out of the prison. She frees the rebels that they met earlier that I glossed over. And the rebels start a rebellion against Kang. And then like the Ant family all shows up and gets back together, and they're beating up Kang, and Kang's minions are getting beaten up, and then like they beat up MODOK, and then MODOK gets liberated with like, don't be a dick. That's what Cassie tells him, like, don't be a dick, because like whatever, it's just a weird throwaway line. And then like at the end, the ants show up and beat up Kang and MODOK. Though MODOK and the ants are what beats Kang to a certain degree, because there is a final fight between Kang and Ant-Man, and Kang loses again. So Kang gets blipped away, but we don't know if he's dead or not. Just like he kind of just disappears the same way as Darren Cross, aka Yellow Jacket, did in Ant-Man 1. So never say never to Kang the Conqueror. He might come back later, but we don't know what actually happened to him. I do believe, if I recall, and I'll be honest, I can't remember if they officially say he passed away in the end credit scenes, so I'm a little fuzzy on that detail. If I'm incorrect, please just drop it in the comment saying, yeah, he was reportedly dead in the end credit scenes. Sorry for the spoilers. That's the thing with Kang. It doesn't really matter if the guy dies. There's 20 million of them. Like, it's an infinite amount of universes of this same character, so it's okay. He's a throwaway character. But is it okay? That's a different question for another time. Because here's another cool plot point that they could have done and they missed out. So we have the end where it looks like Scott Lang's going to be stuck. The portal closes. I forgot there's a portal. And it closes. And Scott Lang's fighting Kang, and it closes on him. And he's like, dang it, I guess he's going to be stuck. But it's not. They reopen the portal. Hope Van Dyne shows up, helps save the day, so to speak. Kang dies, happily ever after kiss, and they leave the quantum realm together. And that's it. That's the end of the movie. I hope I didn't spoil too much. I've already mentioned a couple things that I haven't liked throughout this film. And here's another thing I think I don't like about this film. I think we didn't need Kang as the overarching bad guy for this film. I think MODOK should have been the main villain that the Ant family had to fight in order to get out of the quantum verse. That just makes sense to me because of Ant-Man 1 to Ant-Man 3. It just makes sense. It just makes sense. And then once you finish with MODOK, who doesn't necessarily need to be dead, he could just be defeated and like, woe is me. I'll get you next time, Ant-Man family, next time. And then at the end credit scene, we could have shown Kang and get him started up just like we did with Thanos. Just start sprinkling Kang into the end credits and then build him up into the actual movies. But in this regard, how we've had Kang twice now. If you haven't watched Loki season 1, you wouldn't have been introduced to Kang yet. So if you haven't watched that, you wouldn't really know about Kang. But Kang, spoiler alert, dies in that one too, and then he dies in this one, and it just feels like this character as a supervillain on the same kind of level of Thanos really feels underwhelming because he keeps dying. And I guess that's the point of the character. I'm not super well versed in the whole Kang character either. As a comic book reader, I never really got into him, so I'm not like super well versed in him, and it just kind of makes me go, all right, he's just dead again. Like, I don't know. I want my villain to be badass and menacing with layers, not played by a really damn good actor with layers that dies every damn time he's on screen. Like, I don't see him as a threat right now. So what did I like about this movie? Straight up, I really just enjoyed the Ant-Man family as a family in this sci-fi universe. I'm a sucker for that trope of a family lost in space, i.e. Lost in Space with the Robinsons. I also liked Strange Worlds because I really like that concept of a family going on an adventure together and bonding over trials and tribulations of chaos. And you know what I'm saying? Like, I like that as a story narrative. And this movie gives me a ton of that. That's why I liked it. I just couldn't stop enjoying it because I just like these characters. I had a fun time with them and I liked their adventure, even though there is things in this movie that I do dislike. But in general, I like the concept of a family going on an adventure together, and that's the main thing I liked in this movie. And I wish it was the Ant family versus MODOK to get out of the quantum realm. That would have been freaking cool. And then they could go back to the quantum realm as much as they want, but whatever. I digress. Yeah, and I think the Ant family versus Mordok as the only storyline that's going on in this movie would have been great. Yeah, because that's all Ant-Man really needs. It's just a cool villain of the week. Tell me a cool story and we're going to have a fun time. And that's what all the Ant-Man movies have been up until this point, where this one is like, here's the big bad of the entire MCU right now. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. So Ant-Man just beat up the big bad. You know what I'm saying? Ant-Man, the low-level hero of the Avengers, beat up and killed, with help, Kang the Conqueror, who is the big bad of the MCU going forward in stage 5, 6, and 7 or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, that don't make sense. But Ant-Man beating up Mordok in the quantum realm to escape, and then you show me at the end of the credit Kang doing stuff. Okay. It makes sense. It makes sense. And here's another thing. At the end of the film, Scott Lang doesn't go to the Avengers and say, hey, I just got my butt whooped. I won, but I got my butt whooped by this dude named Kang. We should do something about this because he seems pretty important. And like Janet Van Dyne knows everything about this dude, but they didn't have any scene after the fact that they went to the Avengers headquarters or even to whoever to talk. Man, go talk to what's his face, Wong, and be like, yo, dog, I just interacted with this dude in the quantum realm named Kang, and he's a badass dude. And there's supposedly multiples of them. Listen to Janet over here, and she can report it. Like, it's almost like they forgot that this actually happened, and this threat is a threat. Like, yeah, that was weird. Now that I think about it, that should have been the end chunk of the movie, not what they gave us, but that's what should have happened. So the real question is, Brett, will you buy this movie and add it to your collection? And I'm going to be honest with you, no. And also, I don't own a single MCU movie in my collection. I'm sorry. Don't care. There's only a couple MCU movies that I actually would want to own, and this is not one of them, unfortunately. So no, I do not want to own this in my collection. Do I think you should go and watch this film? Yeah, go check it out, or wait for it to stream, whatever you want. It's still a fun movie. Like, I enjoyed myself watching this film. So that's the end of this movie review, my friends. And I just want to say thank you very much for watching and giving me a couple minutes of your time. And if you have seen this movie, leave a comment. I'd really like to have a discussion with anyone who's seen this movie. Let's try not spoil the movie in the comments, but I would really like to have that kind of conversation because this movie is quite polarizing on the internet, and I'm very surprised that an Ant-Man movie has garnered this much love and disdain at the same time. I never would have thought that. Anyways, thanks again for watching. I hope you guys all have a very good week and enjoy the movies. Peace.